Welcome, everyone. How are you today? If you're just joining us, please write your name and organization in the chat so we can get a sense of who's all in the room. And we're just going to give people, 30 seconds or so to continue trickling in. I'm Sarah Casisio, Director of All In. Super excited to be with you all today to talk about this important issue of our adult education teaching workforce. So again, we'll just give everybody a couple more minutes to trickle in. Please write your name and organization in the chat, and we're gonna get started in just a moment. I see people trickling in. Welcome, everyone. Oh, the chat is disabled. Got it. Okay, let me see. We will fix that on our side and make sure that we can enable that chat. Thanks for letting me know. All right, open now. So welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. Very excited to, even though I can't see all of you, I feel your presence. We're here for the All In Learning Series. And All In, the learning series is really about getting into specific topics in the adult education field a little bit deeper, being able to share and showcase what we're learning and understanding about the field. All In is a collection of adult education and literacy experts, organizations that mostly work on a national scale. We are a coalition of 12 organizations, including many that you may be familiar with. Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, our convening organization, as well as National Center for Families Learning, Jobs for the Future, World Education, Pro Literacy, and many others. We recognize that together we can be much more impactful in addressing this issue of low literacy throughout our country rather than work as individual organizations. I can say with the instability that we have going on right now, community, reliable, caring communities are more important than ever. So we're just really thrilled that you're part of this. And as I mentioned, we have 12 national organizations who are part of our coordinating council, but we work with so many other researchers, state directors, educators, and organizations on the ground to make sure that our work is relevant and impactful to everyone. I am sort of speaking to the choir, so I won't talk too much about this, but I want to share that the need is greater than ever. We now know that over 58 million adults in the United States have foundational literacy needs, meaning they're reading at a level 1 or below, according to the latest PIAC data. That means they're able to read short, simple sentences, but could use additional skills. On that note, 92% of jobs now require digital skills. Since this data came out from National Skills Coalition in 2023, it's likely even closer to 100. We know many workers also need English skills, and the percentage of adults in incarcerated settings is even higher in terms of the literacy needs. So we thank everybody that is working in this space and continues to work in this space. I know it feels hard to sometimes keep that momentum going with all the things happening, but we really appreciate you all showing up and focusing on this important issue. So as you know, as I just shared, about 28% of adults, an estimated 58.9 million, live with third grade literacy skills or below. And while you can't directly connect adult and children's literacy, we're really talking about those literacy skills that people have. And on that note, fewer than 10% are really enrolled in literacy services. This number is hard to quantify. We know that in the federally funded programs, they're serving over 1 million programs, but there are so many community-based organizations and other initiatives happening. So it's hard to fully quantify, but we estimate it's fewer than 10% of the total need. And I see all these local literacy providers here. We welcome you, super excited for you to be a part. The National Action Plan for Adult Literacy was kind of the beginning direction for All In, which was convened by over 100 experts, educators, researchers, and adult learners themselves to kind of set a shared agenda. One, we're very focused on raising awareness and advocating for change now more than ever. The need to invest in adult education, family literacy, digital literacy is just abundantly clear. We are also connected to outcomes-focused research. We work with many partners in this area, American Institute for Research, World Education, and others, Migration Policy Institute, to make sure that we're really understanding the context that we're working in, but also the specific learning and engagement strategies that work for supporting our adults. And the third bullet, which we're going to focus mostly on today, which is supporting our instructors, right? This is the backbone of the adult literacy education system. And what are the different ways that we can continue to understand and support adult educators across the landscape? We're also always finding ways to catalyze high impact innovation, we call it, but also thinking about what are the different systems that we need in place over time. And finally, we really believe that adult learners themselves are part of this movement. We want to engage them and understand what current as well as prospective learners need. And just giving a plug for our next learning series, it's going to be about our latest data, which we surveyed 2,000 adults who are living with low literacy, ages 16 to 65. And we're going to find out from them what they say that they need in terms of learning and education opportunities. So that in a nutshell is our national action plan, and we're working every day to kind of address some of those issues. This issue, as many of you know, is just so critical. You cannot have an adult education system without the teaching workforce, including the volunteers, part-time, full-time teachers. And the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy looks specifically at this issue of capacity and what we could potentially need to expand the teaching workforce in the US. So I'll again introduce myself. I'm Sarah Casisio. I'm the director of All In, which is convened by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. Know many of you, and many of you may be new faces, so welcome, great to connect with you. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague from the Build for Good internship program to introduce himself.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Gerald Aquile. I am a senior at the University of North Carolina, and right now I am pursuing a dual degree in physics and political science. And I was a Build for Good alum, an initiative by New America. And what a Build for Good intern means was we were interns who were interested in the nonprofit space and the ed tech space and intersections of education and data science and literacy and all things technology and education. So through that internship, I was matched with the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy and All In to help with this nice little research project for the past 10 weeks. And yeah, I am excited to share what we have found and what we've done, because it's right up my alley of what my main focus in life is, doing data science for social good, mainly education and everything that has to do with education and literacy. So yeah, that's a quick summary about who I am.
Thank you. And we're also joined by our State Director of Adult Education in Kansas. Hector, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for being here. It is my pleasure to be part of this discussion, and I will be glad to answer some of the questions when it comes to my my part of participation. But I just wanted to make sure that we know that we all said that adult students are the heart of adult education. I just want to make sure that everybody think through this is the heart of education, but the nerve system is the instructors. We are the ones that are moving, and I have the pleasure to be student, to be teacher, and now I'm joining the state and director. Then I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Hector. We're so excited to have you here. As Hector mentioned, we're going to be having a discussion toward the end of this call and saving plenty of time for that. I'm going to share a little bit about the project overview and then pass it over to Gerald, who's going to talk about our guiding questions, our methodology, what we were looking to understand and find with this report. And we'll also be dropping some resources in the chat and include those in a follow-up as well. If you have questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat. We may be able to answer them in real time. Otherwise, we'll definitely get to a great discussion as we go. So this project, as I mentioned, really started with the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy, which we're going to drop into the chat. One of the key recommendations or initiatives in that plan is one of the key challenges, I should say, that we wanted to address is that there's an established system for K through 12 instructors and an even more established system for the U.S. higher education system. However, there's really no comparable infrastructure, centralized infrastructure for the adult literacy instructors across, the country. We know from Carla Causey at American Institute for Research and others that there is a major and will be continued to be a major shortage of qualified teachers in the adult education field. There's also a low wage issue where we have a median salary of $59,000. We think it's really hard to collect that data exactly, and many people are earning, even less than $35,000 a year. So hard to think about sustainability when we're also thinking about wages and, job stability and all of that. There's also a lack of diversity in the teaching workforce, as well as a lack of digital access. And a lot of our colleagues have done work in this area, including Federico Salas Isnardi, as well as Daquana Harrison, on, just the need to think about the number of teachers. And as Federico just put in the chat, most are part-time. 81% of our adult education teaching for workforce is part-time. And Gerald's going to talk through that a little bit more. So what we wanted to do for the project, one of the ideas was, what if we designed a national credentialing system for adult education? But before we go into designing, into innovating, it's really important to understand what is the current lay of the land, and is that even necessary, right? So we wanted to look at what's happening across states in terms of investment in adult education, federal spending specifically, including educator pay. As we all know, there is a lot of instability about federal spending in this very moment. I will say that we collected this data and research between May and August of 2024. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about this spending and all of that. We wanted to understand the requirements for teaching adults by state. Are there credentials required, degrees required, specializations, things like that, as well as what is the career trajectory for adult educators by state? Are there kind of talent pipelines in place, career skills training? What are the pathways for adult education professionals? And so with that, I partnered up with New America's Build for Good program. I was, beyond fortunate and lucky to get matched with Gerald, who did an incredible, job, and his internship has long been over. We're still working together. And he's senior in college right now, as you heard, but just been such a value add to the all-in learning community. The impact of this, we have not, quite we still have work to do in this area, but we want to build awareness for the field. We want people to understand and feel like they understand what's happening for the adult learning landscape. So with that, that's kind of the project in a nutshell. I'm going to pass it over to Gerald to talk through our methodology and some of our high-level findings. And please feel free to add your questions in the chat.
Okay, yeah. So when starting our research project, we knew that we had a general idea of what we wanted to look at, such as where the adult education system is housed, whether it's in the state's Department of Education or community college, for example. But we also want to look at like qualifications, certifications, degree requirements, professional development, and training. So our main three categories of questions we wanted to look at and do analysis on was the investment in adult education, the educator qualification requirements, and the professional development. So we really want to focus on questions like, does it matter where the system is housed? Does spending at a federal level impact the percentage of full-time adult educators by state? And how does state level spending impact full-time educators, whether it is greater than or equal to or less than federal spending? And if there's a set pay level for educators in a state. And educator qualification requirements, we're going to talk about like how easy it is to become a teacher of adult education in a state and how easy it is to find that information. What the different certification requirements look like on a state-by-state basis, and the overall just ratio of full-time and part-time staff, and just see like how much staff each state has to disposal based on like national data collected. And we also looked at professional development. The offer professional development is there statewide certification programs that can help ease the path to becoming a certified educator of adult education in the state, and whether teaching and if the relationship between teaching time and professional development, if that relationship exists, or if there's compensation for that planning time that those important educators put in to make sure their students and learners are getting the best education they can get. So from those questions, I'll start looking into some of our methodologies and analysis. First, before any analysis can take place, we got to gather data, right? So the main quantitative data sources we looked at was the CoWave Educate and Elevate fact sheets. And I used that fact sheet to collect information about federal dollars of per pupil spending. And I added that to a spreadsheet that we'll look at later. I used the National Reporting System, or the NRS for short, to look at the statistics on educator staff. So how much full-time, part-time, and volunteer staff a state reports each year. And I also looked at the NASDAQ fact sheets to get the statistics on both federal and state funding, a good estimate about how much a state gets in federal funding and how much funding they can raise on their own. And I used the NASDAQ state directory to pretty much record where the adult education system is housed and who the main director is for adult education that state is. And yeah, just that was kind of the basis of when I was building the spreadsheet. So those are the main data sources. And like I mentioned a few seconds earlier, that is the spreadsheet I compiled. I started off with the state/US territory, the director of that state or territory, where the system is housed, and then I classified the system. And then further columns, I talk about how much funding the state gets both federally and statewide. The per pupil dollars and other statistics that I recorded from the fact sheets and NASDAQ website and COABE. So because I was new to the adult education sector and just learning on the go and learning day by day, I was really like, my eyes were really open to like the successes and like challenges adult education has had over the years. I mean, again, like I was still like new, so I was still learning everything I can about it through like readings, through talking with Sarah and other all-in members and their perspectives. So because I was like new to the sector, I was able to like think of more questions I could ask, or more questions someone else in my position would ask, someone who's new to adult education, especially someone who may be really passionate about adult education. They want to become an educator. So I know, reflecting on my traditional K-12 experience, teachers usually have a streamlined way of becoming certified and becoming a licensed teacher in their state. But because adult education really varies from state to state to even program by program, it's really hard to get that big overall like big picture of like how to get certified. So I decided like let me first look at how the states certify their educators and see how easy it is to find out information about how to become certified. So that's where the main question on the screen is. I'm interested in becoming an adult educator. How easy is it to find qualification requirements in my state? So what my method was, I would go to the NASDAQ directory and look at the information, and I would click on the website link the directory provides to the agency's website, and I will look for any kind of information about like the minimum requirements or qualifications regarding adult education or any subdivision of adult education, just any semblance of adult education that needs like a certification. So that's including but not limited to ABE, GED, ESOL, ASE, IECLE, CTE, IT. I think we all are familiar with those subdivisions. So I was looking for any kind of information about how do I become certified to teach that kind of area of adult education. And I gave myself about 15 to 30 minutes to, scour the website, do as much like searches on the finder, like because usually each website has like a kind of like search tool where you can just type up keywords and it'll provide you with links that has those keywords. So for about 15 to 30 minutes, I would try doing that and try to see if I can find any information about how to be certified. And how I marked it was, yes, I was able to find information that yes, information was accessible on the website, or no, information was not accessible on the website, despite me typing up any possible keyword I can think of. Um, and I was thinking about, okay, maybe I should just like type up requirements or certification or stuff like that. Maybe you should start thinking more broader and more general. So that's why I was thinking, let me use guidelines, policy, requirements, instructor, qualifications, legislature, very broad terms that I can, find like some kind of like documents on the website that go more like specific and more detailed approach. And that did help a lot. Some guideline, I found out that some certification, like state certification requirements, are in just the state's guidelines or legislation policies. So those keywords really did help, broaden my search. And on the same spreadsheet from the last slide, I marked on a drop down whether I was able to find the information or not able to find the information. And I would take it a step further. I would try to see, all right, if I can't find this information on that agency's website, can I find it somewhere else on the internet? Whether that's another state government agency that probably works closely related to adult education, but doesn't house the system. So I would try to find other state agencies that maybe had that information, or just other third-party websites that had that info. And then for our qualitative data, it came down to two things. Our qualitative data came to interviews with state directors and conversations with NASDAQ and OCTAE and other key stakeholders. And we also did a survey. We programmed a survey that we sent out to all the state directors, all the education state directors. And we were able to get a response rate of 54%, which is 31 out of 57. And from the interviews from the state directors, we looked at some quotes, important quotes the directors mentioned, and coded some of them that would be important, which in those quotes usually talked about stuff about educator pay, certification, the professional development, the challenges, the successes, what they're looking forward to in the futures of adult education. And when we programmed the survey, we had about 4 sections, and those sections really zoomed in on professional development, educator pay, certification, recruitment and marketing tactics. And yeah, that was basically how we did our data. And so I can talk about the key findings we had after the 10-ish weeks. So first, when I categorized the agencies, I did this because I knew I was going to be doing some kind of quantitative analysis. So I wanted to make it really easy on myself, Sarah, and anyone who wants to look at this data to have something to compare everything to, because that's the first rule of data analysis. Have something to compare, have a data point to compare to another data point and make insights about that. So from the NASDAQ directory, I was able to classify all 57 agencies, the 50 states, DC, and the territories, Guam, Puerto Rico, Samoa, Northern Marianas, Palau, and the Virgin Islands. And we discovered that, as you see from the bar graph, that the department, state slash territories Department of Education is the most common area where the adult education system is housed, taking about 51%, which it was very, very impressive. But another thing that really shocked me was that the community college slash technical based college and Department of Labor slash workforce agencies, they took about 39% together, and they had about the same amount of frequencies. And there was 5 higher education board slash agencies. And to clarify what a higher ed board or agency is, it was an agency or organization that did most of the operations and logistics of that state's adult education, but it was separate from the state's Department of Education or Labor or Department of Workforce Agency, or just any state, any of that state's official government. So there was 5 of those. There was 5 of those from the NASDAQ directory that I was able to find. And another important key statistics I found was, after I was looking through the websites to see if I could find information on how to become certified, I discovered that about 56% of states did have information on their website on how to be certified, but still 44% did not, which is still a very glaring statistic, meaning that if someone lives in that 40% on how to become certified and being an educator, it's going to be tougher for them to find that information because it's not directly posted on their state's website. And there was times where an agency's website did not have a specific area to mention the qualifications, but it did have that information on another government website, or another government website associated with that state. And our main examples were South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Ohio, which I found very interesting.
Thank you, Gerald. And you can see in the chat, people were very impressed with your hands-on approach. Gerald he came and said, I have an idea. What if I pretend I want to become an adult educator in each state? I said, I love it. Go for it. And he really just took that idea and went with it, because if we are talking about things like a teacher shortage or trying to recruit teachers and how challenging it is, I mean, you see this stat, 44% of agencies don't even have it on the website, right? So this is a major quick fix, we should be able to do for adult ed. And I'm going to talk about some more of our key findings, and Gerald, feel free to chime in because we did this analysis together. So in addition, we looked at some of the educator qualifications and requirements, and just, as an overall, there is so much variability in this space. And it was hard to kind of write up key findings given the level of variability, but we did our best in a short time. So 52% of the state directors surveyed, said that a bachelor's degree is required. And that was really often in the state departments of education, right? So in many cases, we know K through 12 current teachers or retired teachers often also teach adult education. I worked in New York City Department of Education for many years, and a lot of our high school teachers by day were high school equivalency teachers by night, right? And that's a very common situation for adult educators. But in other places, they did require a teaching license in any area. You could have a early childhood, K through 12, any kind, or a specific, level license, and be qualified to teach adult ed. Only 4 of the 31 respondents indicated offering any type of statewide certification, which we thought was pretty interesting. Colorado, Minnesota, Washington, D.C., and Wisconsin did have accredited higher education institutions that were able to offer some kind of official adult education certification. Again, we're not recommending that people have a certification. We're just saying that was one of the key findings. And New Mexico was a really interesting example we just wanted to highlight, is working on establishing an adult education credential. So we'll be interested to follow what they're doing. I imagine we'll have many conversations about this topic. And it's not going to be mandatory, but very importantly, it will be linked to pay increases, which brings us to our next point. Educator, professional, PD, training, resources. About 19% of those interviewed or surveyed mentioned using Octave's adult education teacher competencies. These are evidence-based competencies that were developed with many, important stakeholders in the adult education community. They're amazing, but really a relatively small percentage of states are looking at these. In addition, but we did know that over 40% said they are actively recruiting and hiring, especially in adult basic education, adult secondary education, high school equivalency, and TESOL. And I see the chat blowing up. Love to talk about this. About 42% did use annual wage increases or bonuses to recruit and attract teachers or retain, and 40% provided health and retirement benefits. So, that means 60% surveyed are not thinking about health and retirement. That's a big challenge if you think about job stability. I always say I probably would have stayed in the classroom if I could have, better pay and job stability in the adult ed space. And I think many of us feel that way. Teachers with knowledge of reading instruction, this was a very important point, were valuable regardless of if they were early childhood, elementary or high school. Everyone unanimously said, if you have specific knowledge of reading instruction, this is a huge value add to the adult education, as well as teachers that had specialized skills and competencies. And on the discussion of educator pay, American Institute for Research has done a little bit of work in this area as well. But there's really no uniform pay. We found that adult learner spending is wildly different in each space, the learner spending. And we also found that higher spending per state does not always translate to full-time, better paid teachers. And that was one of our assumptions at the beginning. I thought, okay, if the state is spending more on adult education, they likely have more full-time teachers. That was not the case. We found no correlation there. Adult educator pay, it's just really varied. And most often it's hourly, and they struggle to compete with K through 12 pay rates. I know Kayana Good and the Technical College System of Georgia shared with us, that's one of the challenges is the K through 12 system pays better, right? And so if you do have a certification, where are you going to look for a job, right? We're all struggling. Milk is like $8 a gallon. Some states allocate substantial funding to attract and retain qualified teachers, while others really did struggle with budget constraints. And in many states, pay is often driven by local unions and contracts, which was super interesting to learn, especially in the K through 12 or community college systems. The state directors said, I'd love to have a say in the pay, but that's, worked out through the unions. And finally, as you can imagine, there was inconsistent access to relevant PD for adult educators. I want to mention too that while we did a landscape research, this is not a full exhaustive research given the short length of time. So there are other resources that I've since learned about, such as Literacy Works in Illinois. I can drop those resources in the chat, but they've done some work on wages, in the state of Illinois and others, or educator satisfaction with their job and things like that. So there is definitely more work to be done in this area. We also want to show what is working, right? Teachers, adult education teachers, I can't say this enough, they are a stabilizing force in our system, as Hector said, that connective tissue, and they are also a stabilizing force in the lives of the learners, right? A learner, I can't stress this enough, and it came up in so many conversations, doesn't know if you're a volunteer, part-time, or full-time teacher, and honestly, it doesn't matter to them. Can you connect with that learner? Can you help them through, their goals and meet those goals? So we know that that part of education is still working. We also learned that teaching adults requires specific skill sets, and the state directors shared with us, especially, the ability to connect with the adult learner's daily experience, their life, their work experiences. One thing that came up a few times was super interesting is that K through 12 experience, while very, could be relevant and important, such as reading instruction, it doesn't always translate to teaching adults. And many of us on this call know, the variety of factors that impact adult learning are so great. Former adult learners, especially those who share language and culture with the learner population, can be such a valuable asset to the learning community. I worked in the South Bronx for many years. Our GED instructor that had the most GEDs coming out of her program, she got a GED herself, right? And held those students to an extremely high standard. I did it, you can do it, right? So we know that connection, culturally relevant teaching, language connection, background connection really does matter. Alaska did such a great job in focusing on hiring Native Alaskans to really connect with their majority learner population. South Carolina, we connected with Mike King. He's been a phenomenal partner, state director of education there, adult ed there. Said, they're always looking for ways to advance people in the K through 12 adult into the adult education system, working with paraprofessionals, bus drivers, like people that are already, you know, biometric, fingerprinted, ready to go, but also have an interest in, you know, being part of their community through the adult education. We also know that stable pay and full-time teaching is not always an option, even though we heavily advocate for that. In many cases, state directors shared with us, like teachers who have specialized skills and competencies, like really know a certain area of math or computer science or how to teach English or electrical installation. Like one specialized skill set that you teach can be a huge value to the field, especially because of the diversity of learners that we see. So it wasn't always a negative thing that we have a lot of part-time and volunteer staff. And so a focus on teaching in specialized areas based on community needs can be a major contribution to the field. So of course, we have some limitations to this research, and you know, feel free to share those with us, like share your, you know, constructive feedback with us. We did most of the data collection and analysis in a 10-week period, very short, you know, but we got a lot, we learned a lot. We had the loss of one interview recording, but we had handwritten notes, so we didn't code one of those interviews, but most of them we did use Deduce, a qualitative data coding app. We focused primarily on state directors for this initial research, excluding the perspectives of program directors, teachers, and learners, but that's because this is just the initial research. We really want to get funding and want to do more work to understand better the program directors, the teachers' experiences, the learners' experiences. And finally, this does not include a full picture. Our research, a lot of the funding, you know, data that we have there is mostly federal. It doesn't include a full picture of what the states invest. We know certain states, you know, are doing the minimum federal requirement match, and other states like California are putting in a lot more of adult education funding, and they have one of the largest adult education programs. So real quick recommendations, and then we're gonna chat because I'm loving all this discussion going on, and we have Hector here to shed some light from his experience as a learner, teacher, now state director. So these are very high level, but we think number one, we can do, okay, this is not a huge lift. You need to develop a state-specific strategy, okay, to hire, find, and retain, sorry, that's typo, retain highly qualified adult education teachers. Number one, put it on the website of what it takes to become a teacher. You might get more people there. The second one was focus on adult educator professional competencies over certifications. Many of you may know that prior to joining All In and Barbara Bush Foundation, I worked at Digital Promise, where we did a lot of research on the use of credentials, especially micro credentials. And what we found in our research there is that credentials can work, but if and only if they're tied to higher pay, you know, relevant skill set that people need, better job opportunities in the future. And we found a similar thing with this, is that competencies might be more valuable given the diversity of the learning that students need, as well as the mostly part-time and volunteer teaching workforce, 81%, that we have, is that maybe it's better to focus on specific competencies that are needed to support adults, such as those described in the Octave adult educator competencies, rather than require certifications, which, you know, could require pay, and it's not necessarily guaranteed that you're going to make more money. So I think we just want to be smart, and thinking about competencies as a good place to start. Can we get everybody with the skills and competencies they need to effectively meet the learners that they have? That we felt was more important than can we get everybody certified, right? So the deeper impact over how many certifications can we get. And finally, we need to invest way more research. We did this research project on a nickel, but we hope that the outcomes are, very valuable to the field. And Gerald was just, an unbelievable asset to the team. But we need more. We need more research among adult education providers, teachers, learners. So please send me any research you have. I know several people have already said, I've read that report. We've looked at this in, our state. So please keep the conversation going. And with that, Hector, if you want to turn on your camera, we're just going to shut off the slides here and get to some of the discussion. So Hector, while I'm looking at some of the questions, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about how the adult education system is structured in Kansas.
Thank you, Sarah. I think before I go to that, I will like to congratulate you and Gerald for this research, and the information is going to be very valuable for everybody. And it is a first start, but it is a good start. When we like to describe the adult education system in Kansas, I like to say that we are under the Kansas Board of Regents that oversees the post-secondary education and the workforce development. This aligns well enough that ensures that adult education is integrated with the career pathways, technical education, and the higher education initiatives. And this allowed students to transition seamlessly from basic education to college and career training. Kansas adult education is funded through a combination of federal, and we all Title II, state and local resources. We operate under the majority of our participants or providers are in community college and technical college. We have 3 agencies that are part of the K-12 that we administer, and we support them in different ways of services that they provide, from high school equivalency, literacy, English language acquisition, digital literacy, workforce preparation, integrated educational training, post-secondary education, and all of those services. And that is what is very unique in Kansas for me to say that the integration between the post-secondary education and the workforce is a very impactful on our system. We are aligned totally with the Kansas Board of Regents state's vision for skilled workforce. We ensure that all our students have access to wraparound services for workforce training and post-secondary opportunities. We like to say that we lead our students into an economic self-sufficiency. Then that's kind of like in the nutshell what the system looks like in Kansas. Sarah.
Thank you so much. And that was one of the, as Gerald mentioned at the beginning, there were 5, kind of more outlier programs with the Higher Education and Workforce Board, and Kansas is one of those. So thank you for explaining that. It's important for all of us to kind of understand that that's part of the challenge and complexity, is that our adult education system really does vary by state. So that's super helpful. Another question that has come up in the chat and everything, and throughout our conversations with you, is what kind of, efforts do you all do to help make sure your teachers or volunteers have the competencies they need?
I think that's a good question, Sarah, and I wanted to make sure that when we talk about instructional staff in adult education, there is a variety of, it's not only full-time, part-time volunteers and tutors. I think there is some other additionals there that I'm missing, but most important, it is all of them are teaching students, and all of they have different needs. Full-time teachers, we know they don't have the right salaries across the board. With part-time teachers, they're getting there, and like I said on your research and your interview, they come and teach the same as the full-time, and they're using part of their life time, family time, and they're not get paid for that. And not only that they're not receiving their benefits, it is unfortunately that there is not enough resources for those volunteers. Did we have enough resources for them to come and volunteer in their classroom? We probably don't. Then what are those resources that we are leaving aside or behind for all those instructors? Then that I wanted to make that clear. But different efforts that we have, it is a very intensive professional development, because when we one of our requirements is to have a bachelor's degree in education, English, math, social science, or related field. But we have some exceptions. We have some exemptions to programs when they show that they want to be part of the educational program. Then we can accept those instructors that they have an associate degree, and they talk to the director, and the director look into their path, and they say they're going to be able to go to the continue to obtain their bachelor's degree. Then we remove that qualification and we give them that exception. But we are ensure that they have a very robust professional development. We ask all our instructors, they have between 12 to 15 hours of instructional or professional development annually. And this will not only help them get to deliver the instruction, but also help us continue to have that robust professional development for them, and identify some of their needs to provide additional technical assistance. We know that we have a lot of turnover, and like everybody else, but we try to find the ways that as long as we provide enough support and different resources for them to make their job easier. I'm not saying it's easy at all. Teaching adults is hard, and there's different ways of teaching in different environments, not only in the community, but in jail, or in a technical college, in the K-12, in the rural community, in the urban community. There's different ways, in the library, in the church, and there's different, and each one of them, they have different needs. And if we are able to support all those needs, the job will be a little easier. And we're gonna try to do that through technical assistance and professional development.
Thank you so much. And that actually ties to one of the comments earlier in the chat, which was about prison education. Prison education relies very heavily on volunteers, and they have a whole set of different challenges. I know we did some work on Rikers Island when I was at District 79. We finally got, in New York City, we finally got permission to use tablets, but then the concrete was so thick we couldn't get the Wi-Fi going, right? So the challenges, the flexibility, the nimble thinking that you need in a prison education system is different. The trauma-informed approaches, right? So I love what you're saying, that it really does matter, what context you're teaching in, what kinds of skills and competencies you need. So it's great to have.
That is a totally different research that we probably need to be looking into. It is what skill set is needed for a person that is going to teach at the correctional facility. We cannot, and this is by experience, we cannot put the teacher that is volunteer in the community organization going to the correctional and expect that we have the same outcomes right away. That is not possible. We need to invest in some professional development and identify how those skills are, what skills are, and how are we going to be providing those tools to the person going into a correctional facility.
Great point. And one of the points that's in the full report, which I just dropped into the chat, is that there isn't a match with the specialization areas. For example, we know that 56%, according to the last data of adult learners, are English learners in the federally funded programs, but only 11%, have a certificate in teaching English, right? So the need to support, that area, like how do you create a language objective? How do you support English for different areas is very important. Can you all unmute? I'm not sure, Beverly, you had put something in the chat. Didn't know if you wanted to share that by voice, or I saw Federico may have had a hand up, but if anybody would like to unmute and ask a question, feel free. They may not be able to unmute. Sorry, I didn't quite look into that if they could or not. Oh, sorry, Beverly, you might not be able to. I think we had to enable that. So Beverly had shared that Arizona Department of Education had specific adult education teacher standards and competencies. That's great. They're required to hold a bachelor's degree and an Arizona adult education certification. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, sorry, I'll make sure that the next one we can unmute. My apologies, everyone. I know we have just 4 minutes left and there's such great topics. I'll just ask people to put in the chat if you would like to have another conversation about this topic, potentially more of a forum, less of a webinar.
Sarah?
Oh, yes, there you go.
Okay, something popped in my screen saying that you wanted me to talk, and it had a button. So I don't know what you did, but it popped in my screen.
Go ahead.
So anyway, I'm not sure that I need to share anything specific. Thanks to Hector, I just gave you kudos, Hector, for some comment that you made. I am very, very, very interested in talking more about this, and particularly in building capacity for volunteers. I work in a situation where most of the programs that I serve, my office serves, do not receive WIOA funding. They are not publicly funded, although we work in close partnership with them. So I would love to continue this conversation, particularly in what has to do with training volunteers and training volunteers for specific purposes, such as Hector said, sending them to correctional facilities. You cannot send a volunteer there without proper training. You cannot send a volunteer to a workplace facility without understanding the requirements of that particular workplace. So they need a specific training. Anyway, I could talk for the next hour, and I'm sure that we don't have the time. But Hector and Gerald, thank you for your research. There is a lot more work to do, and I am available if anyone wants to talk more. And great to see the conversations that we have had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as we mentioned, we are so grateful for all of the state directors who are so open and sharing, about what they're trying to do in their state, what they're currently doing, what they hope to do, where they feel their challenges are. I mean, it was just so informative. We spoke to Hector and many others who we acknowledge in the report. We also we really appreciate the 31 that responded in July. That's a really hard time to do a survey in education, but we really, really thank everybody. So I wanted to say, stay tuned. We are having this learning series every month. We really hope that it's effective and helpful for people getting a little bit deeper into topics. The next session is going to be on our latest research of 2,000 adults who are qualified or eligible but not enrolled in services. And we're very excited to talk about that. But thank you, Hector, for being part of this project, for your willingness to share, for your amazing leadership in the adult education field through Candace as well as through COABE. And thank you, Gerald, my extraordinary research partner in this work. So more to come, everyone. We are going to be saving this to YouTube, as well as sending a follow-up email with all the resources. And we'll make sure to collect all the stuff in the chat and have that available as well. So thank you, everybody, and feel free. I'm going to put my email in the chat. You can please follow us on LinkedIn. We have a monthly newsletter, and you can also email me directly at sarah@barberbush.org. So have a great day, everyone, and keep on keeping on. We know it's not an easy time right now, so just, the community is very important. All right, take care all.